Hello, prospective languages students and students of Spanish. I'm Solomon Mohi,
I'm Katan Oni.
and today we'll just be going through studying Spanish at Harris Westminster Sixth Form. But before we do that, let's just talk about the other languages that we offer. We offer German, Latin, Ancient Greek, French, and of course Spanish. German, Latin, and Ancient Greek are taught at Westminster School, which is just beside our school, and French and Spanish are taught at Harris Westminster Sixth Form. And today, of course, we'll be talking specifically about Spanish. So, Spanish follows the PreU course. What is PreU? PreU is equivalent to A level. It's just another exam board by Cambridge International. It stands for pre-university, and I guess the best thing about PreU is that it sets you up very nicely for university because it covers a range of topics throughout Spanish culture, such as health, media, the Hispanic world, inequality, religion, and much, much more. And it gives you a lot of insight into Spanish culture and current affairs now and in the past as well. And we also study 3 films and a play, and sorry, not a play, and some short stories. We study 3 films from Almodovar, the world famous Almodovar, such as Todo sobre mi madre, Volver, and Julieta, and short stories from the famous Argentinian writer Borges. And the PreU course structure allows you to study Spanish in depth, and it allows you for a lot more independence. An example of this would be our portfolios that we do in class. So every holidays you get a portfolio that you have to do, which is 4 articles that you read and summarize, and then you also read some literary text and you watch a play as well. And this allows for a lot of independence because you can go and read and research whatever you like. And obviously it exposes you to more Spanish during the holidays so that you don't forget anything as well. And it gives you greater exploration of the Spanish language and culture. Also in class, we use authentic sources for listening exercises such as the news, or we go to authentic Spanish YouTube channels as well, and we watch YouTube videos in there, which we use for our listening resources. We also have Spanish practice with a Spanish native language assistant, which is really good because they give us a great insight into the culture of Spain and what the current, I guess, slang is sometimes as well, what people currently use, that type of thing, which gives you great insight into the culture. And we also, when we're doing reading exercises or speaking exercises, we have authentic sources, authentic articles from El Mundo or El País as well. And a bit about PreU again, like I said, it's similar to A level. It's the same qualification at the end, but they are both harder than GCSE, of course, and we'll go a bit more into detail later about that. And the best thing about PreU, the PreU course is that it's less formulaic than other exam boards. It allows for flexibility and more in-depth learning of Spanish. You're allowed to research what you want to do. For example, when we do a speaking project in year 13, you research a topic that interests you, and then you speak about that in your exam. And that's, something, of course, you guys don't get to do at GCSE. At GCSE, you get a list of questions that you write answers to, and then you just regurgitate that in the exam. But at PreU, you're really allowed to do whatever you find interesting in the pertaining to the Hispanic world. And on top of that, the half term of year 12, you spend learning about the Spanish history and its culture, ranging from the beginning of Spain to the Muslim period. Before that was obviously the Roman invasion of Spain, and then you have the Reconquest, and then more recently Franco's regime, and then modern day Spain after that, and La Movida Madrileña, and so forth, which is really interesting because it will help you out for the rest of the course. It'll set you up nicely for what you're doing for the rest of the 2 years with PreU. And I guess I'll move on to Kitan now to talk about her experience of learning Spanish at Harris?
Um, Learning Spanish at Harris Westminster it's been very challenging, but also very interesting. Especially, I found learning about the films and the books especially interesting because I've been able to immerse myself in the culture that way. I've learned about Almodovar, who's someone I'd never heard about before, and I've come to really appreciate his genius and his methods. And I've also learned how to look at films differently and appreciate camera movements, appreciate scripts and all these kinds of things. I've also enjoyed learning about Borges's literature. It's kind of brought me back to GCSE in the sense that I'm analyzing texts again. Yeah, overall, it's just been very fulfilling.
Yeah, I agree. It really, I mean, compared to GCSE, as you guys would know, GCSE, you mostly just cover your topics, you learn your vocab maybe on Quizlet, then you go and do your exam, you write about what you did last weekend or you did on your last holiday, and that's about it. But at PreU, it's really, allowing you to explore Spain and the Spanish culture. You feel like you're becoming more Spanish every lesson than you think the kids on. Yeah, I think it's just a great experience, and it really allows you to explore the language, I think, a lot more. I keep on saying this, but it really does a lot more than GCSE. I think that's something you'll especially find when you're learning PreU. And before we get on to some frequently asked questions, I just wanted to mention Languages and Linguistic Society. So Language and Linguistic Society is a great society. It's probably the best in my opinion. And it's really where you have fellow language enthusiasts who give presentations on whatever they find interesting, whatever you find interesting in Spanish or about linguistics. You can give a presentation on it, then we'll have a discussion. We might watch a video. Sometimes we have guest lecturers come in from Roster Group universities, and if we're extremely lucky, from Oxford and Cambridge from time to time. And it's just a place where if you want to study language at university, you should definitely come, because you will have some really engaging, thought-provoking discussions and sometimes debates if it comes to linguistics and the origins of language, for example. We also have a mentoring scheme in our society where year 12 and year 13 are paired up together and they make a presentation together on something they both find interesting, which is, really exciting because you get to know people in the year above or the year below a lot more better. And it also allows you to share your passion for languages with another person. And the history of past presentations have been such as translation, literary translation, the difficulties of translating from Spanish to English, for example, and the role of grammar in translation. So I did a presentation recently on Continuidad de los Pages by Mashkes, which is a famous writer in magical realism, and how he uses the preterite and imperfect in his story to emphasize what he's writing about. Because as you guys will know, the preterite tense in Spanish and the imperfect tense in Spanish are both in the past, but in English you only have one past tense. So it's interesting to see how the translated version into English is very different to the original in Spanish. And another example of what we can do in societies, learn a language from scratch. So our German student in society was teaching us a bit of German as well, some past tense and some imperfect tense, funnily enough, as well. And then we also have presentations on linguistics as well, such as the history and evolution of language. So it's really an all-inclusive society for anyone who loves languages and linguistics to come along, especially if you want to pursue it at university. And I guess moving on to FAQs, Kirtan, what do you think about the jump between GCSE and PreU?
Oh, the jump was it was actually quite large because PreU it was a lot more challenging than I was expecting. It was a lot more different. At GCSE, you do the writing, reading, listening, speaking, da 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 da. But then you come to PreU, and all of a sudden you're learning about culture, you're learning about film, you're learning about books, and it was just very different, and it was a bit difficult to get used to. But I've come to really appreciate it.
Yeah, I agree. And I remember when I went for a Cambridge Open Day and I was talking to one of the academics, and they said that the jump between GCSE and PreU is actually larger than the jump between PreU and university, which I thought was quite interesting. And of course, could sound quite daunting as well for anyone who wants to take PreU. But I would say don't think of it like that. Think of it as an opportunity for you to grow and really become a lot more fluent in Spanish than what you were in GCSE, unless you're native, of course. But yeah, I think it's an exciting opportunity for you to learn more, and it's in the name. PreU is pre-university, so it sets you up really well for university, especially if you want to take Spanish further. But Kitan, for you as well, what if you don't want to study languages at university, and how does Spanish help your other subjects? Because I know you're not taking Spanish further.
Yeah, even if you don't want to do languages at university, I think studying language as an A level is also a really good thing, because you get to appreciate another culture a lot more. You also get to retain that essay writing skill that you may have lost if you decided to do all STEM. You Yeah, it's also very stimulating mentally. I found that because I have another language in my under my belt, I'm challenging myself a lot more. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
and you also get learning a language obviously helps you with your job prospects as well, doesn't it? As in
yeah, it does.
employs a lot more like candidates a lot more if they know another language, because it means they're a lot more versatile in what they can do. And I remember reading this article saying being bilingual in two languages changes the way of thinking, because you're a lot more versatile to two cultures, because you know two cultures, you can adapt to situations better, especially if you know two languages. And of course, if you know more than two, then that keeps on increasing. What about Spanish with your other subjects though? Because I know you do math, physics, and history, I think, as
Yeah.
well.
So I've gained analytical skills from Spanish, which are very transferable into history because we're analyzing sources and stuff like that, and also helps with my essay writing skills, as I've mentioned before. Yeah, that's really what I can say for how it's helped my other subjects. But even if you don't want to do languages at university, you may end up really loving it and decide to do like a course on the side or something like that, just to keep it, you know.
Yeah, I think that's quite important, because a lot of unis these days offer languages on the side of main degrees. So such as you can these days you can even do biochemistry with Spanish or French, or any other language. You can do engineering with Spanish. You can literally do anything you think of, I think, except for medicine, because medicine is quite a rigorous course, an intensive course. But any other course you could probably do as a language at most universities these days, because a lot of universities are realizing the importance of people having a language under their belt, like you said, Kitan, which is really important for when you go into the world of work. And for me, how does it help my other subjects? I think the analytical side of grammar has been quite important. I've found parallels to algebra and math and grammar in Spanish, which might sound bizarre, but I think it's helped me understand how to analyze something better and what to look for. And that's especially true for when you're learning, I think, algebra and math, which you have to look for certain key signs when you're doing a question, for example. And I guess moving on to what's the workload like, and a typical lesson as well. I'll start with a typical lesson actually. So you always start with saying hola to your whole class, or you say buenos dias. And then most of the time you would be speaking in Spanish in your classroom with your teacher, especially if you're doing a speaking lesson, or if you're doing some listening or reading and writing exercise. You mostly speak in Spanish with your students, fellow students, and your teacher. But if you're learning maybe something like grammar, or you're doing literary or film analysis, then it'll probably be in English to help you understand what you're doing, as well as being able to express yourself and properly, so that you can analyze the film and the short stories properly as well. as in lessons as well, you obviously have speaking. You speak with a teacher. As I said before, we've got a speaking assistant who's a native, and our teachers are also native, and they're brilliant. They will help you with anything, any problems you have, anything you're finding difficult. They'll help you as much as they can, and they'll give you amazing resources to use. And I guess that moves on to the workload. Whenever you're finding it difficult, you can just go to your teacher and ask them for help, especially during lab time, which I think is most beneficial, because then they'll help you out, and they give you, if it's grammar, they'll give you more grammar practice. If it's speaking, they'll speak with you, or if it's listening, they'll give you some websites to go to as well, which is, you know, great for increasing your proficiency in Spanish. And more on the workload, I think it's definitely manageable. I think it's definitely keeping within the 4 hours of homework that Harris gives you per subject per week. Most of the time will be maybe doing further exercise on the grammar that you learned that week in class, or it might be a reading or listening exercise, for example. It will just be, and it might be an essay sometimes as well. But I think the most important thing is try to find what you find fun about Spanish and try and incorporate that into your homework, because I think that would help you out a lot more. And especially during the holidays, we have to do portfolios. And portfolios are when you do 4 articles, 1 film, and some literary text as well. And then you summarize all of those and you put them into a portfolio every half term or holiday. And that obviously allows you to explore what you find interesting in Spanish and increase your knowledge of Spanish culture as well, which, you know, can be really interesting if you make it interesting. I think it's important that you find what you're interested in Spanish and pursue that as much as you can, because you'll find it very beneficial and it'll help your proficiency in the language as well. Kitan, going back to you then, what's the most interesting part of the course and what maybe you don't like too much about it?
The most interesting part, in my opinion, is probably the speaking, because you get to research something that you're really passionate about and share about it. Yeah, so that part is like really fulfilling. And then there's also the films, which I've mentioned many times, but I just really enjoy that side of the course. And what I don't like about it is probably grammar, because I find that the most challenging is just a lot to remember. All the irregulars and the subjunctives, it's a lot to get used to, in my opinion.
So I guess I'm the opposite of you there, because I love the grammar aspect of Spanish. So I'm applying for Spanish and linguistics at university, and a big part of linguistics is, of course, analyzing grammar, the syntax, for example, the verbs and the tenses. And I find that really interesting personally myself, how you get irregulars, why you get irregulars, that type of thing. And I think what I don't really like about the course is probably the essay writing, because I guess it's just a chore for me. But I think over the terms, I've come to enjoy essay writing a lot more, because, as I said just now, if you find what you like about Spanish and you try to incorporate that in whatever you do, I think you'll find it a lot more interesting. And I've been doing that recently in my essay writing. I've been watching YouTube videos to help me understand more about the topic that I'm writing about, and that's, you know, made it a lot more fun and engaging for me. So Spanish, I guess, is a very interdisciplinary subject in that respect, because you can just do many things within the subject whilst also exposing yourself to the Spanish language constantly, which will obviously help you in your final exam and if you want to take it further at university. I think other than that, that's the end of our presentation. Thank you for listening. If you guys obviously have any other questions, let us know. But other than that, Kitan, thank you as
Thank
well.
you.
Thank you, guys. I hope you take Spanish at Harris Westminster. Bye.
Bye.